Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the SSF podcast. We are in season 12, and this is episode 2 of our new season. I am, as always, Jessica, joined by my lovely co host.
Emma Jackson. And today we are joined by our first guest author. It is the lovely Venetia Constantine, and she's here to talk to us about her debut novel, which is The Last Starborn Seer. So first and foremost, we always like to ask our guests if they would just tell us a bit about their book and who it would most appeal to, like the ideal reader.
Thank you for having me, firstly. The Last Starborn Seer, it is the first book in an epic romantic fantasy series, publishing in March, and it is set in a dying world of 4 feuding realms with cursed elemental powers. And it follows our heroine, Leilani, who is a princess, but she's shunned by her realm because she's also the last heir to a very dangerous starborn magic, which means she has visions of the future, but it's slowly corrupting her mind. And in the book, we follow her as she embarks on a perilous quest in search of a lost relic with the power to save her dying realm and her very unwell mother, and watch as she has to forge alliances with her mortal enemies and navigate many challenges in her attempt to do that. And and in terms of ideal reader, I think this is going to be for readers who really enjoy immersive worlds and quite messy characters. Generational trauma is a theme, and the characters are, I don't even know if morally grey is the correct term. They're damaged people, so they don't always make the best decisions,
Mm.
um, but they are all trying to navigate quite serious challenges. And yes, I think readers that enjoy, probably fantasy readers, I would say, although I think everyone is open to trying new genres, but readers that do enjoy immersive worlds, being transported, and yeah, that are willing to give quite messy characters a bit of a chance.
Yeah, definitely.
We're here
Morally
for
grey
it.
is a funny thing, actually. I've got this lovely, I like my characters morally grey, which I got from Jess. But it depends on what you see as your morals,
Yeah.
really, on whether you think people are grey or not. Like you're saying, if it's just to do with your background and the context that you're coming from, you're not necessarily doing something morally wrong. It's interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
Okay,
Do I need to read the
next
book?
question. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yep. So we've mentioned it's your debut and that the world building is just super ambitious. How long did it actually take you to write it? And did you always know that you were going to be this meticulous with the creation of the world?
This is a long and probably true two-pronged question. So the world of Arcalia, this world that this book's set in, has been with me, like, I don't remember a time when it didn't exist. It's been with me since I was a tiny child. And I used to tell my mother stories about it when we would walk to school. I have early notebooks, probably the earliest one I have, I think I'm about 6 or 7, judging by the handwriting, scribbling down ideas about this world. So it's always been with me. And some of the characters have been with me for as long as that as well. And it's just a world that I kind of continue to play in and develop across my lifetime. Always wanted to be a writer, always wanted to write this story specifically, but it just, life took me in different directions. And for whatever reason, it just wasn't quite, I just wasn't writing the story. I had little bits written, little snippets and world building and stuff, but not the story. And when I began writing it in earnest was in 2018. And that was because I was the victim of quite a violent armed robbery and developed very severe PTSD and had a really bad mental health crisis. And at a time when this world, the real world, just felt impossible to live in, I escaped into my imaginary world and it just poured out of me. And I think that's because suddenly I had the main character arc, which was about, we have a dying world in need of healing, but we also then have this main character who is similarly struggling to accept herself and in as much need of healing as the world. And those two things sort of dovetail together. And so I started writing it, yeah, in 2018, and then decided to write all 3 books. And there's actually a prequel book, so technically 4 books, which I drafted very roughly, the rest of them. But I did write the whole series before I started thinking about publishing. And I don't know that it was ever intentional that I was going to write a meticulous world, but I do, and I've always enjoyed world building is one of the main reasons why I love fantasy. I love escaping into worlds that are, magical and otherworldly. And that's part of why I enjoy fantasy as a genre. So I suppose because that's the kind of fantasy I love reading, it's the kind of fantasy I've ended up writing. But I don't think it was ever that I intended to write a particularly meticulous world. I just think it's probably where I enjoy And it's one of the reasons that I love fantasy. So I suppose that's why it's ended up in there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I like there's so much detail in everything within the worlds in your book, and it just made me think of like Tolkien with his like, I'm going to invent an entire language or seven, for everything. And it's just, yeah, it's just that passion. Obviously, it's
Yeah, I mean, I
amazing.
think no one will ever be. I mean, Tolkien to me is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time for very good reason. I just think no. I mean, I just finished reading, which I've been wanting to read my whole life and haven't actually read until now properly, the Silmarillion. And when you and just the depth and the, I mean, he is a whole nother level. And like,
Mm,
you know, any comparison to him is the greatest compliment known to man. But like, clearly, I don't think anyone's going to be talking about it. Really, honestly, he is a breed unto himself. But I do enjoy. I enjoy worlds that are fully fleshed out, and that is a big part of the reading experience. Like that is one of the reasons. I mean, I also obviously love characters and other things, but I do enjoy that transportive quality to fantasy. That's why I'm drawn to it above, any other genre. So yeah.
lovely. So obviously you've been working on it for a very, very long time in your imagination. And it kind of all centers, the plot all centers around this creation myth, that, yeah, is how their world has come to be, and the magic and everything involved. And I just wondered if you were inspired by any particular myths or folklore or legends, if any of that worked its way in consciously or subconsciously, maybe.
I mean, I think I've always loved myth, folklore, all of that. I, studied the pre-Raphaelites as my specialty, and obviously most of their work is both based on kind of mythology and folklore and things like that. I think I've always been drawn to it. In terms of this, and I've also always loved creation myths specifically. I just think you can tell so much about a culture about the way that how they think the world and things have come into being. I'm fascinated by that. I can't say that I specifically went to look at any particular myths or legends or folklores when I was creating this world in that kind of one-to-one ratio. But I think I've always been quite fascinated by the idea of the Garden of Eden and more specifically the expulsion from it, being
Mm,
forced out and not allowed to return, that kind of homesickness for a place you can't return to, I suppose, nostalgia, that sense. So I think there is an element of that. And obviously that is in my creation myth of the kind of Dawn and Dust sister, that one of these deities gets expelled from the original world and cannot go back, and so creates another world as a sort of, it is almost a nostalgia exercise, but also an attempt to try and create a better world, something that can't be corrupted like the original one was. So I think, yeah, I think that was there. Also, I have always had a complete obsession with the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. I actually wrote my MA thesis on representations of Sleeping Beauty in pre-Raphaelite art. I think it's one that's just always spoken to me because of that idea of the world being put to sleep and this sort of
mm,
enchanted slumber. And again, this sort of nostalgic wanting to keep things from moving forward, stasis almost. And I think that you can see elements of that. There is a slumber spell that the kind of four most powerful magi in my world have put themselves under. And there is an element of, because there are these magical wards slowing the curse down, that things have been artificially kept in a sort of stasis until the point when the novel begins, when everything is breaking down. So I think you can see little elements of it, and there's probably so many more, but it wasn't that I consciously thought, right, I'm going to look at this particular creation myth or this
mm,
particular fairy tale and try and model the book around that. I have done that with other works I've written, but not with this one in that way.
yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, I just love that how these things, even though you don't try, they always just have this habit of sneaking in just in
Yeah.
daily life, and you don't realize how much they get a hold of you, do you? Until
Yeah, and I think that's because fairy tales, folklore, and things, they are so archetypal to human experience. And that's why I love them still. I still read fairy tales now. I still love children's literature for that reason. There's something that just connects to a very essential part of humanity. And so even something like, there's a lot of mirroring in my book, a lot of doppelgangering. That's intentional, as kind of mirroring of characters. And I think that comes again, that's in a very archetype that is in so many folklores and things like that. And yeah, they are insidious. They are just part of our kind of human collective experience, which is why I think, still so powerful and still so resonant even now.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
for all people. I am going to pull us away from this, though. Every time we talk to people, we could just kind of keep chatting
Yeah.
about a subject, but I'm pulling us away. Sorry. So, yeah, romantic subplot. There is a love triangle in there. And we have noted that one corner has a bit of an issue with wearing shirts. So, we wondered if perhaps it was a nod to a Team Edward, Team Jacob kind of thing.
It's not, but I find that hilarious. No, I am team love triangle. I love them. Now I know this is divisive. Divisive. A lot of people really, really hate them. I have always loved them because to me, it's not so much about a person choosing between two people as a person choosing between two pathways for themselves. Like a love triangle done right to me, the love interest should represent different pathways for that person. So it's not necessarily choosing between two people, as choosing what they want for themselves. And I love that personally. I really enjoy it as a trope. So no, I mean I did read Twilight. I was Team Edward all the way as a younger person. But I can't say the reason. So Blaze is one of the love. He is an enemy envoy who travels, and they have a lot of bad blood between them historically between these two realms. He is adverse to wearing clothes for quite a long time, but that is mainly because he is someone that has a lot of very entrenched insecurities, but he is built like a god and uses his physicality to intimidate people. So he it's a self-defense mechanism in the same way that he uses humor as weapons as well. And it is a way for him to kind of physically dominate space and take up space, make people feel uncomfortable because he himself is feeling so uncomfortable and internally is feeling small and demeaned and uses this kind of you impresses his physicality on people, and that is one of the main reasons why he is shirtless for so long. Plus, he is pretty, and I enjoyed looking at him while I was writing.
Yeah,
No arguments this end.
that works. Absolutely. So going back to Tolkien, there's quite a strong sort of Fellowship of the Ring feel to the narrative, in that you've got, this band of very different people coming together on this mission. How did you go about managing so many characters and the development of all of their relationships?
Yeah, so I think found family is one of my favorite tropes, or probably my favorite trope in fantasy. And I think it's one that is just really topical, particularly at the moment, because we live in a world of increasing polarization. Social media means we have echo chambers. We only really hear our own thoughts and people that repeat them back to us. And I think the real danger of being radicalized, and I think there's such an importance in spending time with people who do not share your viewpoint in terms of broadening worldview and increasing compassion and all these things. So I love found family for that reason, and so it was important to me to have it in there. And I wanted, because I have a world of divided realms and they literally are living in isolationism. I really wanted to bring lots of characters together, and it is, an epic romantic fantasy, so that sense of scale, I think, is nice to have a sort of bigger cast. It is a challenge. It is a challenge when you're trying to make sure that you give enough page time to the main thrust of whatever's going on, but also make sure that all the characters are getting some space. And obviously, I'm glad that we have more than one book because it means that characters who I would have loved to have spent more time with in book one will get more time in subsequent books. But it definitely is, as you're writing it in terms of craft, it is something that, you have to always be like, hang on, have I forgotten? Where is that character? Have we heard from them for a while? And sometimes that comes in edits. You'll write your first draft and it might focus on whatever the main part of that scene is happening. And then you might realize, hang on, I haven't heard from X character for a while. And in edits, you will need to go and kind of pull those threads out. But I think in terms of building the characters, probably because I've been living in this world for a long time, all of them are quite fully fleshed. And I do writing exercises. So I will write from every character's POV, like little short timed pieces, so that I know their backstory, I know their history, I know why they are the way they are, what their wants and needs and things like that are. I do quite a lot of character work before I'm writing the book in a way. And I do also, obviously, they're all important individually, but I was thinking about them as a group. So, quite deliberately, for example, I have a character called Maris who comes from the Southern realm, and she is quite intentionally a foil to my main character, Leilani. Leilani is someone who is very unsure of herself, at war with herself, very repressed and not in touch with her desires and her own physicality, whereas Maris is incredibly self-confident. She is very much body confident, sex positive, very just different, and they are intentionally designed to work as like foils. And that was sort of true of the whole cast, trying to make sure that they all were bringing something slightly different or able to comment and reflect on each other's positions as well, so that you have conflict and tension, but also kind of what was important to me is that they can all sort of learn from each other and collectively grow. And so, yeah, it's definitely a big challenge, and it's not one that I
Mm.
necessarily even know that I got completely correct. I would have loved to have been able to spend, more time on everyone, but there are a lot of them, and I think the nature of it means that, yeah, hopefully in other books you can kind of pull out more time with some of the ones that didn't get as much airtime in.
Absolutely.
Well, I was going to say, from somebody who loves side characters, I am very happy to know all of this because I am just envisioning all the next books you're going to write about the
Mm.
side characters as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, book 15, it's all good. So, previously in your earlier life, you were an art dealer. How much did your understanding of art shape the prose within your world?
Hmm. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people have commented to me that I'm quite a visual writer, and I suppose maybe that is where, I mean, I am not an artist. Like I have zero artistic ability. I have to say, like I can't draw stick people. I come from a family of artists, and I'm horrific. So there's no, but I think people have said quite a visual writer, and I think that's probably true. Like I do enjoy kind of descriptive writing, so probably there is an element of that kind of visualness that comes into the way I write in terms of prose. I also think it's interesting. I hadn't really realized it, but I use art objects a lot in my writing, particularly as a way to kind of convey world building. So paintings, sculptural friezes, tapestries, things like that. I use, which I hadn't really realized, but there's a lot of art being used as a way of kind of communicating exposition, I would say, or fleshing out world building. So you can probably see that background through that as well in the way that I wrote.
That totally makes sense, though, in the way that the story is looking back at this epic history that they've had, and that's exactly how we understand what has come before and how people interpreted the world around them. And I would expect, your vocabulary that you must have built up to be an art dealer and to study art would be perfect. It was perfect for the description and to give exactly what you need. Being an artist doesn't help you necessarily to write a book because it's a picture, isn't it, that is
Yeah, no,
communicating.
yeah, I think that sort of obviously as an art historian, you are using words to exactly do that, interpret history, interpret economics, all those things, and sort of build up a picture of the world and the context for the artworks. And so I think you're right, vocabulary wise, it is helpful to be able, and also to be able to then, I suppose, yeah, have a framework to be able to use things like books and art and pieces of things
Mm.
like that as a way of a lens into the world, because that's the way that I'm used to approaching my understanding
Yeah,
is
exactly.
objects, I suppose. So yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but that is very true, and probably why it happens the way it happens in.
Yeah,
All right.
it was, yeah, very well done. Um, so have you always been a fantasy romance fan? And what was the first book in this kind of genre that really stole your heart?
Ah. So I think this is a really interesting question. I suppose fantasy romance wasn't really a buzzword until
Mm.
fairly recently. So I read fantasy. I grew up on C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, Peter S. Beagle, my much beloved The Last Unicorn. If we're talking about a book that stole my heart, it was The Last Unicorn. Now that has romance in it, as do most books, as do
Mm.
most fantasy books. And then I was very much inspired by people like Laini Taylor or Holly Black and Leigh Bardugo. Again, there's romance in all of that. Is it
Mm.
romance? What is romanticy
Yeah.
in here? So I would say, I mean, I think we are calling mine epic romantic fantasy, which I think is accurate. There is a very strong romantic subplot, but I think you could remove that and there would still be a fully fleshed quest book. So the question of what is romanticy and where does mine sit next to it, I think is a really big question. I also love like what I would term proper romanticy. I read it and I really enjoy it. And I think, again, where does that line come? Because to me, I suppose I would say like, things like The Cruel Prince are romanticy, but it's not that kind of spicy romanticy that is, I think, what we might understand romanticy to be now. But that
Mm.
was probably some of the early ones that kind of, or as I say, like Laini Taylor's trilogy, Smoke and Bone, Daughter of Smoke and Bones.
Yeah. Daughter
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Smoke and
I
Bone. Yeah.
love those, and I love those so much. And that kind of book was probably my gateway into wanting to write. And that was probably the touchstone I had more so than romanticy proper that I think we would understand it now, because I've been writing this for so long that that wasn't a framework for me when I started
Mm.
these books.
Yeah. You've spoke to me. I love those. The Cruel Prince is like one of my all-time rereads constantly. And that is one hill I will die on. A lot of people argue that it isn't a fantasy romance, and I just feel like, well, the story wouldn't really happen if you didn't have that relationship. The same with Daughter of Smoke and Bone. It's very much hinged on that forbidden romance.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's other fantasy that is romantic fantasy, has the subplot, it's very, very enjoyable and important to the story, but you can take it out. So
Yeah, I just think it's a very nuanced issue. I think, there's so many, and I think it really depends on what your understanding of fantasy romance, romantic fantasy, because it's different for each person. And, what my
Mm,
expectations as a reader might be. If you're somebody that really loves kind of quite an urban tone and very accessible world building, and you really want like a pacier, higher heat romantasy, that's going to be very different from somebody who has, I think it's from one reader to the next. What do these genres mean? In the same way that I think YA has become quite a redundant term. I think there's a danger that romantasy or romantic fan they will because it just means something so different to each individual reader now, in a way. So it's yeah, I feel like it's a helpful thing, and I'm happy. Like I love to see it because I think we're seeing, a real rise in female led because of this. And I'm someone that loves I like romance in my books. I think, books with no romance in them would be very sad. Like I do enjoy it. But yeah, I just think it really is so open to interpretation, and reader expectations are so different. So yeah.
yes, very
Well, we've
interesting.
got so many books out there in the world. Everything is subjective. We all love a little bit of something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And that's the joy is that, one
Yeah.
person's was another person's and it really is just down to that connection between the reader and the text.
yeah.
Yep, yep. So, publication day, it is fast approaching. What has been the biggest dream come true moment or moments for you?
I can't believe I actually looked and because I'm on deadline with book two and that's where my focus is, I knew it was obviously very close, but I didn't realize it was like 3 weeks. And I oh my, you're like, oh, it's 3 weeks. That's scary, but exciting. There have been so many. Honestly, this entire journey has been dreamlike. I think because I'm a bit older as well, and because this is a book I've carried for so long, every single tiny part of it has honestly been magical. Two things that I think have stood out really for me have been getting to go to the recording of the audiobook. And I got to meet both actors because it's dual POV and both we've got
Oh, wow.
a male actor and a female actor, and getting to hear them bring my characters to life. And they were both such lovely people as well. That was a real, like, amazing memory that I'll never forget.
Mm,
And then also getting to go to the printers to watch my books being printed was just mind blowing. Like, I can't, it was just such an emotional, amazing, and
that is.
mind blowing experience to see how they actually make books and how many people are like working so hard to make this book come to life that you're never going to meet and you're never going to get to see,
Mm,
and it was yeah, truly both of those have been like massively standout moments, and getting to meet readers. So something like Yalk, when it was just insane to see the support for the book, and again, mind-boggling, overwhelming, like heart bursting out of chest type feelings, just really beautiful memories.
fantastic. So yeah, you mentioned it's 3 weeks, but when this goes out, I think it will only be a few days. It's the 5th of March. So people could get out there and get that book. It will be
Yes.
there. Um, yeah. And you mentioned going along to an event, and we thought we'd mention that we will be chatting again in person because me and Jess will be at Meet Cute Fest on the 4th of July. And Venetia is going to be part of the Romancy panel that we'll be hosting. There'll be 3 other lovely guests as well. Yeah, so we're really looking forward to that. It's going to be amazing. And I guess hearing how things are going for you too is going to be
Yes.
a good, what's it, like about 5 months away from now.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I will
yeah,
have had a crazy ride, and I will probably be very deep in edits for book two.
yeah, that's
Very
it.
much so.
Victorian ghost. Like, but I really enjoyed Meet Cute. It was so much fun last year. It's a really fun
Oh, were
event.
you there last year?
I wasn't on a panel, but I came because I was supporting friends that were, and also they had some like tote bags and things that they wanted, and they just asked me if I wanted to come along. So I came, and it was
Oh,
just fun. I mean, it was boiling hot.
Yes, it
yes.
really
But
was.
so like but in a way, I think that was better than if it had been rain. Like we hope more
Yeah,
rain.
Yes.
And
yes,
it was a bit like a little mini bookish Glastonbury. It was so fun, and just walking
it
through,
was.
all the
Yeah.
and I loved it. So I'm very excited to be invited back as a panelist this year. It's going to be great.
That's it. The vibe was yeah, it was so relaxed and friendly, and yeah, just lots of people loving books and chatting
Hmm.
about them. It was awesome. Really looking forward to it, and wishing you all the best of luck for
Yes.
end of edits first
Yes.
and foremost, and publication day. And thank you so much for joining us and letting us read your book early.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to talk to you both.
Thank you. And we'll be back next week with probably a topic that we'll end up covering on the panel too. We
Yes,
do
yes.
a topic of the month for the season, and next week's one is spice. So
Spice.
we purposefully kind of haven't gone there in our questions so that we can, we can cover that ground later.
In July, yes.
Utmost respect for people that do it because it is not an easy. I think it's one of the hardest things. It does not get enough respect that to do it well. It's as hard as a
Mhm.
battle scene because it's the same kind of thing about choreography of, human bodies
Yeah,
trying to
too many
connect,
limbs all over
Yes,
the
in so
trying
many
to connect,
places.
trying to connect the physical to the emotional, making sure where that balance
yeah.
lies. Really, it's a skill, and I may soon have to implement it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see how that's gone.
Yes,
how,
yes,
how you're
definitely. In
feeling
July,
about it when we
yes.
get there. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much again. And
Thank you.
yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.